You're listening to Served Up, a podcast that features inspiring beverage professionals and topic experts that share their passions through meaningful conversations. I'm your host, Bridget Albert, also known as a Market Fresh Mixologist, an industry mentor with decades of experience. Grab a cocktail and sit back. Let's learn how we can make a positive impact in our industry. Hey y'all, it's Bridget here. Today we're joined by Ben Falcone, the multi-talented director, writer, actor, and producer who's been an integral part of bringing Big Nose Kate whiskey to life. Ben's creative vision has added a whole new layer to the brand, making it not just a whiskey, but a story. And rounding out the conversation is Mel Heim, the CEO and head of product for Big Nose Kate. As a driving force behind the product's development, Mel brings a wealth of expertise in crafting a top-tier experience for whiskey lovers everywhere. Together, they've combined their talents and passions to create something truly unique. So whether you're a whiskey connoisseur or simply someone who appreciates great storytelling, you won't want to miss this conversation. So sit back, grab yourself a glass of Big Nose Kate whiskey, and enjoy the show. Mel and Ben, thank you so much for joining Served Up today.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, excited.
Absolutely. Mel, I want to start off with you. How did you originally start off with a liberal arts major, studying poetry, and winding up being the youngest female distiller west of the Mississippi?
Yeah, that's a good story. You can ask my parents. Nobody knows. Most of my journey in this industry has all been serendipitous and just a willingness to say sure when presented the opportunity to do so. But I grew up in Portland, Oregon, the land of craft beer, really just a craft beverage mecca. And after leaving college, I did get a job at a brewery because you get throw a rock and hit a brewery in this town. So I thought that was a good fit because I was 21 years old. And then just hanging out with those makers and those crafters really sparked an interest. I did home brewing a bit. I was mediocre at that, but I found it really fun. The process was really fun. And again, as someone who studied liberal arts, tapping into the STEM side of my brain was really exhilarating. And I met a distiller in this group, in this community, and ended up hanging out in this little pilot distillery that was attached to the brewery. And he told me, it really was this one compliment. He said, "You have a good nose," because he's always saying, "Oh, smell this, try this." And we were making rum at the time. And I said, "Really?" He said, "Yeah, I think most people do. They just don't know. They haven't been told. They don't have the training." And he told me he was leaving to go to law school. So that sounds terrible. And he said, "But I do need to find a replacement. If you're willing to learn, I'll train you." I did say no 3 times. But then I said yes. And I said, if it doesn't work out, let's not tell anybody. Let's just keep it on the down low. And it did work out. And as soon as I started getting that formal training, I never looked back. I started running that distillery just 6 to 8 weeks later. And that was 17 years ago.
That is really incredible. Just so you're hip to it, my husband and I own a brewery here in our small town in Illinois called Shorewood. And I too was a home brewer and learned how to brew in my garage. So I respect the hell out of you. That's it's a really fun science to learn, but then to go on to apply it to something, completely unique. I'm really excited to dive into Big Nose Kate. But before we do, I want to talk to Ben because Ben, your background is really in acting, being a playwright, a screenwriter, I think a director as well. And, all things that are dazzling. How did you and your wife, Melissa, wind up partnering with Mel?
Well, we got a bottle of Big Nose Kate sent to us, which tends to happen from time to time. Or, people want to know if we're interested in, joining up with them in some way or fashion. And so for some reason, we really love whiskey. And for some reason, the bottle went somewhere in our house where we couldn't find it. And then it was like months later, and our manager's like, "Did you ever try the whiskey?" And we're like, "I don't know where." And finally, we get to it and we try the whiskey, and we loved it, and we loved it. We actually loved the label, and we loved the story. So it was pretty. Once we actually managed to find the bottle that we had misplaced, we were on board pretty much immediately. So we got to meet Mel and everybody, and we liked everyone, and we thought it was a great story and a great juice, as they say. So we were right on board.
Yeah, I had the chance to try it as well. I think that, it's very special, and its story it's just cool. Big Nose Kate. I don't know that our listeners are aware of her place in history, but I would love to flip it back over to Mel. If you can tell us about the face of your brand.
Yeah, Big Nose Kate is one of those people in history whose stories got buried. She was an Old West legend, in our opinion. But if you're not from the American Southwest, her story really lived and died there. So Kate was a Hungarian immigrant. She was orphaned as a child. And really, her whole life was sort of like mine, where she was okay with saying sure. And she really was led by her wanderlust. So she's not a caricature. She's not a made up person. This isn't just some lady that we put on the label. She was a quite fascinating woman. And when I went back and researched, this is the English major, who she was. When I found her story, it was in a book called According to Kate. I love to read. There's one of my bookshelves. I was annoyed. I was flabbergasted. I had all these very big feelings that this person was around in the American West during all those exciting titular times. OK Corral. Everybody knows OK Corral. Kate was there. So she didn't get the moment that she was due. History did a good job making her the side character, and she has very main character energy. So Kate is our heroine, if you will, even though she's not a hero. But I could go on. I could tell you the entire story, start to finish, but I'm sure you have questions why we were inspired.
I do have some questions while you're inspired. I'm going to flip it back over to Ben. Yeah. From what I read about Kate herself, that she could really go toe to toe with Doc Holliday, who is her, what was the term? Not legal wife, but
common
law wife. Yeah. I wouldn't want to be his common law wife. I mean, she must have been quite the character and could really hold her own whiskey, knew about gambling. I mean, all of it. So Ben, do you have any just, stories about Kate herself that you can share?
Well, I'll leave the stories of Kate to Mel. Mel is, after all, the English major. I was a speech comm major, so I mostly just talk.
Okay.
But one thing I can say is that, when Melissa and I saw the label, heard the story, we're just fascinated. It's a pretty male-driven business. So we were just interested in the idea that, there you've got this great whiskey. It features a female protagonist. There's all the fellas on the bar. So I think it was a kind of a cool thing, because obviously there are many male-driven businesses. So it was interesting for Melissa and I to see a female-driven one, driven by a character that's so interesting in history.
Yeah, I mean, for sure. And beverage, especially, we're in the spirits industry, right? It is dominated by men, and it always has been dominated by men. And so to have a brand that is woman facing, woman forward, woman distiller is so unique, even in the day and age in which we live in, which is wild to me. Ben, with that said, can you talk to why it is important to have a female distiller? Why is it important to the distilling community to have that representation?
Well, I mean, I think in every facet of every business and every walk of life, representation is incredibly important. That was one of the reasons when we knew that Mel was the one who created the liquor, the liquid, what do we call it? The juice. We were super interested because we knew that is not something that, unfortunately, that is all that common. I think hopefully it'll continue to change. Melissa being the lead in movies is, it's not as men are more often the leads in movies, so it's something that we're just very interested in, as a family.
Yeah. Yeah. Mel, what does it mean to you to be in the distilling space as a woman?
Well, I was fairly naive when I first got into this space. I was very unaware that there were very few women. But as soon as I was aware, I started the first Women's Distillers Guild back in 2008. And we were the Clear Boot Society, which was a spinoff of the Pink Boot Society for female brewers. And our peak membership was four people. And that was scary, actually. But it also was the catalyst to start seeking mentorship, building a community, finding people. I'm a huge believer in potential over credentials. So my teams have always been like a misfit island. I'm really interested in people who are interested in learning, because that's how I got into the space. I had no business running a distillery, but somebody, like I said, took a chance on me. So really, how far we've come, and Ben, you might not even be aware of the stat, but since I started, there are hundreds of female run distilleries and female distillers and head production folk. I mean, there have been leaps and bounds. Mind you, we're still at about 7% domestically here in the States. But it was under 1%, 17 years ago. So small strides, but still big strides. It's important to have representation. And just to echo what Ben said, same thing. Being a consumer of whiskey, when you look at the back bar, it's Jack, Jim, Johnny, Evan, Elijah, Elmer, Uncle, Granddad, Babby, but it just goes on. And said, we're telling the same story, right? Like we're telling the same story. And our medium as makers is not just making great liquid, but it's telling great stories. And we really just wanted to tell another kind of story.
I'm so glad that you are. Can we talk about the juice itself?
The juice.
And I'll stick with Mel for just a moment. Can you talk about what the listeners should expect when they take that first sip?
Well, they should expect the unexpected. With a protagonist like Kate, who's completely unconventional in the whiskey space, everything I do is based on intention. So if we're going to have this unconventional character, the liquid should represent that. And so what you find in the bottle is not really what you're seeing day to day. I think we were the first to launch a mash bill like this. So it is a unique blend of rye and American single malt, so that it's not a bourbon. It doesn't even have corn in it. It's 53% rye and 47% single malt. As a blender and someone who's been focused on blending the last 8 to 9 years of my career, these are the two spirits that I most like using. And malt being, a very burgeoning category here in the spirit space, not only on its own as American single malt, and, the producers now have great inventories that are, edging the 7 to 10 year. It's a wonderful blending agent, and we really have to lean on the history and the art form of blending scotches. And so that's where I was coming from with the making of this product, is let's blend something unique. Let's make some harmony out of chaos. Rye and malt are completely different, but we found a very nice, unexpected spirit when putting them together.
Well, I think it's unique that you said that you are blending with American single malt, right?
Correct.
And so that is an emerging category. Something that I do is I judge a lot of spirit competitions, and it's just something that we're now seeing on the ballot. We hadn't seen that in years past, but this year we saw a whole lot of them coming, in from all around the country, from coast to coast and down in Texas. And so I think that that's super interesting that you're using it to blend with versus
100%. Exactly.
Yeah.
I love malts. I love the flavor barley. I think this is the background in beer as well. It can be very nuanced. There is a lot of terroir involved. Mm-hmm. And so as a blender, it's a great privilege to be able to call my friends in this space, people that I admire and idolize and who are putting out these exceptional spirits and saying, here's a project that I'm thinking of doing. I love your STR sherry cask expression. Is there something like that you'd be willing to sell for a blended product? And I got yeses for every phone call that I made. And we ended up with this very cool, again, these products you can find in the marketplace on their own, but they've trusted me to take their product and make something else that's exceptional. And as a blender, that brings me great pride. And again, something completely unique to the market. We're not just buying 8-year Kentucky bourbon and putting it in a bottle with a person on it and saying like $60.
Yeah. Because that's usually what happens.
Yeah.
And then, it has such a short life. So the fact that there's an actual story and a technique is unique. Ben, how are you drinking Big Nose Kate?
I usually drink Big Nose Kate just with a little rocks. That's my main move. That's my main move. I know I'm supposed to, the true heroes go neat, but I like a little chill. I think when Kate gets a little, like when the ice melts a little bit, and I just like a cold drink in general. So that's usually how I do it.
Yeah. Very demure.
Yes.
Very demure.
Yes.
Demure.
Oh, Lord. Absolutely. Ben, can you talk about the moment that you met Mel and where you and Melissa decided to partner? What was that like?
Well, this was during a fun little time we call COVID pandemic. Yes, we were all on a Zoom. We were there was like a couple Zooms, and right away just knew that we thought Mel was cool and had a good story, seemed very authentic, and that's sort of how Melissa and I work. We don't get behind a ton of stuff because not everybody is always that way. So it was nice to meet somebody who just is like comfortable in her own shoes and just chatting about a thing that we could all do together. And it just seemed like fun. So we jumped right in.
That's really neat. That's really cool. Mel, can you talk about the process itself, with Big Nose Kate? Like, where are you making this? Where are you at? Where can folks find it? And then I want to get back to the story of Kate herself.
Sure. So currently the product is made in Santa Fe, New Mexico, and it's batch blended there. So I am receiving filled barrels from my partner distilleries across the country. I live in Portland, Oregon, so I have a very awesome commute to New Mexico. I travel quarterly. My distillery partner is Kaylee Shoemaker, which is a name that everybody should also know. A real powerhouse female distiller who's been in this space as long as I have. And she opened a distillery at the same time we were starting this product and this project. Again, serendipity stepping in for us. And, so I go down quarterly. We do sensory, pull barrels. We choose our barrels. And then we do a blend. And right now, we're blending 25 to 40 barrels at a time. Our batches are bigger than they were. I think our first batch was 6 barrels. And when we settle on the profile that we like, our baseline profile, we put it in a vat where it sits for another 30 days before we go to bottling. So right now, our business has picked up. We're very lucky. We made it past our proof of concept phase with flying colors. And product is available in 5 states with Southern Glazers. We actually have a national distribution agreement with you. And that's the West Coast. We believe West is best. It's a Western whiskey. Kate's out West. So Oregon, Washington, California, New Mexico, Arizona. We'll be opening up Nevada and Colorado and Illinois actually next year.
Great.
Ooh,
Surprise.
Illinois. Hey, I just heard that.
Hey, friends.
Yeah.
Hey,
Hi.
friends.
You better hit me up when you do. I hope
deliver you a bottle.
I will love it. We will love it over here. Let's get back to talking about Kate. So my new friend Ben told me that you have some stories about Kate herself. So can we just hear some of, a little bit more about her personality? Because she had to have had this huge personality to wind up on a bottle.
100%. Like we were talking about, I happened to read this book. And we are lucky that this book exists. So Kate was the common law wife of Doc Holliday. And for instance, I just got back yesterday from Phoenix at the Whiskey Fest. And I open every presentation with, how many people here know Doc Holliday? And you get 100% of the hands go up. Great. How many of you know Big Nose Kate? And even in Phoenix, where all this history is in front of you every day, there's about 15% maybe of people. And I was like, see, that's very disappointing because Doc Holliday died when he was 36 years old and Kate died when she was 89 years old. And so if we're going to go tit for tat on adventures, she has a full book and she wouldn't give any interviews. Tough ass lady. Love her. People would come to interview her later in life, and they only wanted to talk about Doc. She said, I'm not here to talk about Doc. And so her history is so fragmented, but historical societies and other folks, the elite historians out there really trying to keep these stories alive, piecemealed this biography together, and I happened to get my hands on it. But Kate was, every day we talk about heroism, and the thing about characters that I find on bottles is they end up being caricatures of the real person, or branders and marketers tend to cherry pick the most desirable traits of somebody, and then they kind of lean into that. But this day and age, we all have Google. I mean, you don't want to tell a fake story. You want to tell a real story, and real people are complicated. And real people are filled with tension. It's not all rainbows and kittens. Kate wasn't some like gun wielding, badass hero of the West. There's a lot of her story that's very gritty, that's tragic. Some of it's extraordinary, and some of it's very ordinary. And that's people. So if we're going to tell a person's story, it was really important to us in our development of the liquid phase to also work with these historians and do the research, and really make sure we understood who she was before we were willing to put her on a whiskey bottle. Because the one thing that bothers me and is quite a pet peeve is if someone asks why and you don't have a good answer, that drives me nuts. So, we're very confident that we're doing her justice and being good stewards of her story and her life. So her legacy can live on, if only through our whiskey. We do think Kate's life lives in bigger forms and is very timeless. I think there's something everybody can relate to about Kate. It's not just that she's a female. It is that she had to make tough choices every day. And if you've ever been destitute or scared or brave, or curious, Kate was all of those things and more.
Yeah, I think it's just wonderful that you put her on a bottle. There's not very many women during, that particular time that we do celebrate in that way. And especially when we're talking about, beverage itself, we don't find a whole lot of historical figures when we look back that we can tie something back to in a very positive, just fun way, and appreciating that character for who they were. So I think that's incredible. I grew up with a family that were all women bartenders outside of Chicago during a time when women really shouldn't have been behind the bar unless they were like a prostitute. So there's, you get it. So it's
amazing.
really, yeah. But it's really cool to have a bottle where folks can go in, and like a woman can go in and feel good about purchasing it as well. Because I too get hung up on all of the dudes on the back of the bar. And it's so rare that we see something in the whiskey space that's created by a woman, that has a woman on the label. And it's just really important to folks like me to see that. So thank you.
You're welcome. It was also important for her to not be polarizing, and that's why we chose to tell the entire story. And we just put it all out there. We're very lucky that the demographic of people who are leaning towards Kate and grabbing Kate is almost identical to our mash bill. The 53-47. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's 53% women, 47% male. Like, that's a wonderful split. We don't want this to be, positioned for a certain type of person. It's really, if you enjoy good stories and good liquid, people seem to be enjoying Kate.
Yeah. Ben, do you have any advice for folks that are listening that have that entrepreneurial spirit, that would love to create a brand, or have a really, really good idea, but they don't know how to start?
Well, it's a really good question. I mean, I think it's important to, when Melissa and I jumped in, we knew that Mel and her team had done the work and the research. Because I think sometimes people think they have a good idea and they sort of like, they go pretty quick and they're like, this is, and they're focused on an end result. Like, I want this idea to make me $1 billion, or I want this thing to be this big deal in my life and get famous or something. And, usually what I tell people to do, I mostly work in entertainment, is to do something very similar to what Mel did, which is like really meticulously crafted this liquid. She's told you about how hard she worked on it, and how many variations she tested and all the ways that she thought it could go and how she used the story to inform what she was going to make. So that I think is incredibly applicable to anybody who's starting anything, is to actually do the work in terms of, I'm going to make this thing because I think it will be really, really cool. And then hopefully someday it will develop into all these other things that are a result. But it's basically, my answer is a very long version of saying, focus on the journey, not the end result.
Yeah, that's really great advice. Really, really great advice. Keep it with you, Ben, for just a minute. Where do you hope to see Big Nose Kate in 5 years? Like, what's the plan? What's the big goal?
I mean, I would love to see Big Nose Kate sort of within 5 years. It's been a sort of a slow growing pattern, I think, intentionally, to let her speak for herself, as it were. But I would hope that in 5 years, it's sort of something that's pretty much right there with all the rest of them, and it's growing, as Mel says. That was a shock to hear that it's going to be in Illinois. I'm so excited because my parents live there.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah. Melissa's from there too. Where are you in Illinois?
I live in Shorewood. I do know that she grew up in Plainfield only because it's the town next to me. Oh, okay. Here's what I know. Besides, your wife's this awesome actress and she's the greatest, right? She went to St. Francis Academy and I went there too my freshman year, but I got kicked out. So story for another time.
Okay. I was like, I like you, very similar to Kate.
Yeah, we know about Melissa in our neck of the woods. But yeah, so I'm excited that Big Nose Kate will be in Illinois. We're such a big market here. Not only do we have Chicago, we have some great small towns too, guys. So I think that's a right decision for your expansion of the brand.
I mean, I'm from downstate, Carbondale. So it's
Carbondale.
You take the train right down there. No problem.
Yeah, no problem. Did you go to SIU, Ben?
I went to SIU for a hot second, but I went to University of Illinois to matriculate.
Ah, okay. All right.
Champaign.
Well, I know. Yeah. All right. Very cool. I'm going to just ask you both one more question. I would love to start with Mel. If you had something to say to Big Nose Kate today, if you could go back in time and meet her, what would you say or what would you ask her?
Well, first I'd say thank you. It really, again, once I learned this story, there was a lot to relate to, and it's good to see people. I mean, it's good to know about people that you can relate to. I'm an emotional person. I just went and visited her grave for the first time, and I didn't expect to break down crying. This was last month in Prescott, and I was completely overwhelmed because it brought the realness to me. Like, she was here. She is here. She's still right here. Funnily, you look to the left, there's a Walmart, but like, if you can put your blinder on, you're back in the pioneer times. But I would say, I hope you don't mind that we're telling your story. And I hope that you see that we found your life very inspiring and very worth telling. You weren't a nobody. You weren't Doc Holliday's girlfriend. You were Maria Magdalena Katarina Horeni. You were a woman beyond your years, and you're really an inspiration. So thank you for letting us tell your story.
That's lovely. Ben, what about you? What would you say to Kate?
Oh, I would probably thank her for being so delicious in an old fashioned. But also, I think it is really neat that, we're able to tell this story of a, complicated woman from the not so distant past, and it's hopefully it'll be a way, seeing her face up there. It's in my local bar. So it kind of makes me happy every time I see her face. So it's more like, I don't have long conversations with her. I more just kind of like, I give her like a little salute. How you doing? And then I get an old fashioned. Yeah.
That's really great. I want to thank you both for being on Served Up today. And I would love to invite you both back next year, maybe towards the middle or end of next year, to give us a Big Nose Kate update. I think our listeners would absolutely love that, to see where the brand is and how much she's grown. And with that, I would love to wish you both just some great health and a lot of peace And cheers to you. And thank you for being on the show.
Thank you, Bridget. I'd be happy to come back. Ben,
well, of
come with me.
course. Yeah, of course. Thanks so much. It was so nice to talk to you today.
You too. All right. Well, have a happy holiday, guys.
Thank you. You too. Cheers.
All right. Thanks for listening. Served Up is brought to you by Southern Glazers Wine and Spirits. Produced by Zunu.online. Music by We Killed the Lion can be found on Spotify. Make sure to subscribe to be notified of our future Served Up episodes. Cheers.